Hello, everyone out there. This is Bob with Thrive Wellness. Today's wellness presentation topic is mindful eating. So, this is a presentation I initially did on site back in December. Mindful eating is really all about trying to adopt a healthier relationship with food. It's not so much a diet in the traditional sense of I'm trying to limit calories, or I'm eating a vegetarian diet, or I'm doing Mediterranean or paleo, for instance. It's more about setting guidelines and more of a philosophy with respect to how, when, and where I choose to eat my food. And this can help in a variety of different senses in terms of helping us achieve our overall diet and nutrition goals. So before we talk about mindful eating, let's talk very quickly about mindfulness, which will kind of help set the stage for the rest of our discussion. So mindfulness in general is all about being present in the moment right now, not thinking about what happened this morning or what's going to happen this afternoon or this evening. So it's really being fully aware of your current environment, your feelings, your senses, and really just being accepting of who you are, and fully aware of what's going on right at this moment. So the idea of mindfulness can be used to help bring about relaxation, to help reduce anxiety, and to help reduce stress. So, how do we then apply the general basic concept of mindfulness to our benefit with respect to our diet and our eating habits? So, that's the question that I hope to be able to answer today. So, a few things we will discuss today. What are the pillars of mindful eating? Connecting food and mood. We'll take a look at mindful eating in practice. So, what exactly does that look like with respect to our habits? We'll talk about the use of something called the hunger scale, which I believe I've spoken about in previous discussions, and using that to your advantage to better recognize your hunger with respect to when I should eat and when I should stop eating. And then we'll talk a bit about controlling your eating environment. And if I'm interested in getting started with some basic mindful eating, what's the first few steps I might want to take? Benefits of mindful eating. So, what can I hope to gain from using mindful eating practices? Well, we can hope to have a better recognition of our hunger and have better control over our cravings, have greater control over when and how we eat. Hopefully, we'll be eating smaller, more sensible portions if we're more in tune with our hunger, when we should start, when we should stop eating. Um, Hopefully, we'll have a better overall relationship with our food. We'll be more accepting of setbacks and shortcomings with respect to our efforts towards eating better. And overall, it's a philosophy that can help you achieve your basic nutrition and health goals. The pillars of mindful eating. So there are four key pillars or guiding principles of mindful eating. The first is knowing your hunger, knowing exactly when you should start eating and when you should stop eating. In a bit, we'll talk a little bit about the hunger scale and using it to help us determine when we should be starting a meal, when we should finish a meal. Really making peace with your food. So again, mindful eating isn't necessarily about being very strict with your dietary choices. It's more about recognizing that I'm not going to be perfect all the time. I'm going to try to eat better. I'm going to try to make more sensible choices for myself. But if I mess up, I'm also not going to beat myself up about it. Pillar 3, listening to your fullness. So much like knowing when to eat, we also need to know when it's most appropriate to stop eating. So again, the hunger scale comes into play there. And then finally, respecting your body. Hopefully, we're doing some of these healthful changes in our life, whether it's mindful eating or eating more fruits and vegetables, with the idea in mind that I want to be a healthier person. So again, respecting your body, bringing some good nutrients into your body, and hopefully bringing about some positive health benefits from that. Connecting food and mood. So it's important to recognize that we don't always eat just to satisfy legitimate physical hunger. So it's common to use food as a form of comfort, stress relief, or as a reward. When food becomes the primary coping mechanism, however, that is when an unhealthy cycle begins. So again, mindfulness in eating is beginning to recognize and in the moment consciously be aware of why I'm reaching for food. Is it actual physical hunger? Is it boredom? Is it out of stress? Is it for comfort? And being able in that moment to decide, do I want to reach for this snack? Is it physical based, or is it more stress relief? So let's take a look at a couple of definitions that tell us a bit about hunger. So the first is physical hunger. So this is hunger and eating that satisfies the body's need for basic energy and nutrients. The second, and important in mindful eating as well, is emotional or stress hunger. So this is when we turn to food for comfort, support, or even as a reward. So in a moment here, we'll take a look at some characteristics that we can use to recognize, is it emotional hunger or is it physical hunger? So why am I hungry? So we've got two columns here, one representing how we feel during bouts of emotional hunger versus how we feel with legitimate physical hunger. So if we're feeling physical hunger, it's likely to come on kind of gradually. Versus emotional hunger, we might feel a very sudden urge to eat something very specific, and we'll cover that in a moment. So again, physical hunger, your needs can wait. I'm feeling hungry, but I can choose to eat in a half hour or an hour. With emotional hunger, you feel like those needs need to be satisfied instantly. With physical hunger, there's a variety of different foods you may choose to that sound good to you at the moment. With respect to emotional hunger, you tend to crave a very specific comfort food, whether for you that's a sweet or salty or savory food, but it's that food that gives you comfort in that moment. With physical hunger, you're more likely to take your time and eat and enjoy food with good company. With respect to emotional hunger, you tend to eat much more quickly. Oftentimes you do it in private. Physical hunger, again, you stop eating basically when you're full. With emotional hunger, you're not really satisfied even with a full stomach. And again, emotional hunger really doesn't take into account actual physical hunger, or when we're full or when we're hungry. Physical hunger, again, after eating, you don't feel bad about yourself in any way. With emotional hunger, after eating, you might experience feelings of guilt or shame or powerlessness. So again, with mindful eating, we're trying to be more aware in that moment that we're experiencing hunger to recognize, is this physical hunger? Is this emotional hunger? And do I want to eat now? With a broader recognition of why it is I'm actually feeling hungry. So let's talk for a moment about stress and emotional eating. Again, being more mindful with respect to our eating habits requires being aware of the stress and how that affects our hunger. So short-term stress often reduces hunger due to acute changes in hormones. Again, bringing about that fight or flight response tends to dampen hunger in that moment. However, if we experience long-term stress, and if that long-term stress is persistent and it's simply not resolved, the stress hormone cortisol remains elevated over time, which can lead to increased hunger, and especially increased cravings for sweet, fatty foods, or both. And over time, as we continue to turn to comfort foods in times of stress and anxiety, that can lead to an emotional dependence on that food that can be really difficult to alter those behavior patterns. So that's when we can use some basic mindful eating principles to help break out of that cycle. Avoiding or reducing emotional eating. Um, One of the most important things about emotional eating is beginning to recognize why you're having the emotional eating cravings in the first place. What's the stressor? And really pinpointing exactly what that trigger is. Now, this kind of gets more into a discussion on stress management and hoping to craft a stress management plan that helps us avoid a good portion of that stress or minimize that stress so we're not having that emotional need to snack or that craving in the first place. So, from what we know of emotional hunger comes on very quickly with that stressor. So, oftentimes, before we even have a chance to think about it, we are reaching for that form of comfort food. So, one of the aspects of mindful eating is being aware of what's going on in that moment, enough to pause, to wait it out. There's a lot of research that will indicate if we can wait at least 5 to 10 minutes during that moment of stress before turning to that comfort food, if we can wait 5 to 10 minutes, oftentimes that urge or that craving passes altogether. But more importantly, in that 5 to 10 minutes, that gives us a chance to really pause and take ownership of that emotion, that stressor, and really give yourself a chance to hopefully turn in a different direction or go down a different path. And at the beginning of Mindful Eating Part 2, we'll talk about the importance of replacing that emotional eating behavior with something else. Again, choosing a different path.